All right, so let's see where KT went bad in the draft, shall we? Okay, so we already know where T1 went bad in the draft in game 1. All right. Let's see where KT went bad in the draft. So what was so T1 banned, what did T1 ban? They banned Sedge, right? They banned Sedge, Senna, and what, Talia? They banned Kale. And what else? I don't. Lucian. They banned Lucian? Alright, let's see. Enemy banned, I'm gonna assume Gwen, and then what? I don't even remember. See, it doesn't even matter. Honestly, like, what even matters anymore? What did enemy even ban? I'm literally blanking. No, I didn't ban Teemo. No! Mr. Ung!
That's where the value of having multiple threats comes in, because Guma can single-handedly turn a fight, Faker could single-handedly turn a fight.
Yeah, hello.
And so could Zeus, even though he was put behind. And look at the damage chart perfectly illustrates that, is that
hold on 1 second.
At times was able to pick off 1 or 2 members of T1, but there's always another.
Yeah. And it makes you think, you know, like the Kalista has felt like a little bit of a trap for a while. I see you. Those in chat that are saying that as soon as Kalista is picked, it's a loss, and we really haven't seen the power of this pick really utilized all that effectively so far in week 1 of Summer. So maybe both of these teams will actually step away from the Kalista moving into game 3, and we'll have a different experience, perhaps.
Maybe. Deft and Barrel did well.
They definitely.
That was the highlight Kalista game, and that was more about what it allowed Barrel to do.
Yeah, that was more like the barrel buff type situation.
All right, sorry, I had to go see.
That is so
I actually don't know. T1 banned. Okay, not Ezreal. KT banned Jhin, Renata, Senna, Lucian. Jhin.
If they win, it's still a win, right?
Renata. Renata. They just hate people with masks, right? Jhin, Renata, Senna, Lucian, Gwen. They hate Renata and they hate Shadow Isles. Lucian, Gwen. Okay. And then what did Nautilus and Ezreal? What was B1? B1 was GP. So you can get away with B1 GP if opponent can't play like an abundance of champions. I mean, Ornn is you define scaling. So define scaling means that oh, didn't mean to do that. Define scaling means that in the isolated one-on-one, right? In the isolated one-on-one, you have to determine what the other teammates are to determine like who scales relative to each other, because both of them are basically the same theme in scaling. Obviously, Gangplank is really scary, but I mean, that's that. Okay, so where do they go wrong? Well, will they go wrong initially? All right, R1 already we lose. What was it? It was. Oh yeah, I said the zoo, right? We already lose. They go Wukong Gnar. So now both of these champions only have one mode. Gnar isn't gonna split push against Gangplank. It's fake news. It's not real. Wukong must go in to Gangplank. The other problem is that Wukong. We already went over this in the game 1 draft thingy-majiggy, where we've already talked about how many losing matchups Wukong has inside of the jungle, including Viego. So honestly, I mean, at this point, it's like it's real bad in the sense that, I mean, Karthus is like, you could just take Karthus and you could take like Corki. Unironically, you could probably just do Karthus Corki, because Corki doesn't incentivize magic resistance building. So this is already really hard for the opponent. You would be leaving Gangplank kind of on an island here, so maybe this isn't the best of circumstances. Again, you can also just do this and then laugh as well, right? Like this is still totally acceptable as well. You can just Ivern and Udyr. And there's not really too much, I think, for the opponents to do. And I think in the event that you're like capable of flexing Swain, you could also just do Udyr, and then you could do Swain. Obviously, I think that would be, I think that would be fine here as well. The opponents are also already like kind of forced to come into you. I'm not really like sure what they would be trying to pivot out of at this point. So maybe you even have options for. I don't really like the idea of Aphelios on B3. Because I think that like the opponents could still try to like play out of it with like Ziggs, or they could try to play out of it with range and stuff like that. They could try to do like maybe Corki on R3, and then it's like really hard to ban Ziggs. It's really hard to ban Ziggs. But I guess with Ivern and with having GP up in top lane, you probably are going to do the dragon stacking, but still you have to dance with Corki at Dragon 3, Dragon 4, which could be a little bit awkward. So I think maybe Aphelios maybe not the best in that situation on B3. B3 Aphelios probably not best. Honestly, Corki B3 with this setup is probably fine. But I mean, I really like Ivern just in general because I think it gives you a lot of options as you develop to bot lane. So Ivern's obviously really good. This way you retain access to Caitlyn as well. Caitlyn gets a lot of value. You can do things like Caitlux combos depending on what enemies do here in response. I think that stuff like that is really important. I think that's good to entertain. AD carry pool is still like very open, right? So I don't think there's anything like too important to worry about really. You don't have to Ivern. You could also just go ADC here, but what ADC are you going to end up going? Again, I don't like Aphelios, I don't like Jinx, because opponents still have options. They aren't developed enough inside of the draft. If you are going to pick a support champion, then it has to be a dual flex champion. So it has to be a champion that's capable of flexing into mid lane as well as going into the support role. You could probably do something like roaming Bard mid in this spot. So you could do Bard mid, and then you could be flexing Bard to support, depending on what the enemy does. But the reason that this is problematic is because if the enemy does something like, I don't know, the enemy does like Corki here, and then ends up only just picking like one of the 80 carries, then and you don't know about Bard's matchup for support. If they retain flex R5, then Bard is never really getting flex to support. He's always just going to be support. So I think for that reason, Bard isn't as ideal. You do have options like Karma, I guess. I think Karma is pretty standard in the sense that you could retain flex regardless of what they try to do on R3, R4. So I think stuff like that is definitely fine. You could do stuff like Lux, because we've already entertained that Caitlyn's a possibility. So if we entertain that Caitlyn's a possibility, depending on like what they do, you have Lux in mid lane, and then you could do something like Caitlyn. Ooh, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. You could do something like Caitlyn Ivern on B4, B5, and then move Lux to support and put Ivern in mid, depending on the mid matchup, and that way you get access to Cait Lux in bot lane, depending on once you have total information of like what's going on. If you think that they can't do anything against Cait Lux. I think this stuff is fine. Yeah, flex Vex. Yeah, get out. Report yourself, man. Picking Vex and ever. Terrible, terrible champion. What else is there? Honestly, Corki B3 is... Corki B3, Ivern B3. These are both fine. Ivern B3 is really hard, because now you can't even pick Corki. I guess you pick a Nivea, but then they have GP, and you have a Nivea, so Udyr's running. Udyr's just lapping you. Swain. I don't know how this matchup is. This is actually really important for me to understand how this matchup works. Swain's put up well against Ivern and Udyr, but Ivern can itemize well against Swain later on for his teammates. I don't know how the matchup dynamic actually goes in mid lane. Maybe this is enough to offset some of the pressure for Wukong, so that we're forced to develop to R4, R5. But now you're so short range and you're so limited in options, I think that Aphelios becomes a real possibility, because no matter what, you're going to have to choose an AD carry. You're probably going to have to choose AD carry R4, and this gives the opponent enough info, I think, to go Cog, Lulu, Zeri, attack speed Varus. There's just too many options. I just think there's no winning R1, R2. I think there's no winning. There's no winning, I think. No one's going to play Ivern, though. So I think that because no one's going to play Ivern, I think Udyr is less of a ask. I think B3 Corki is probably fine. Yeah, I think B3 Corki is fine with the way that things are set up.
lined up with the Callista here.
I mean, if you're really concerned, then you can just Azir. If you're really concerned, but I mean, this like somewhat gives the opponents options to pivot poke, but not really. I don't think it really gives options to pivot poke. I don't like even if they Corki. I mean, I guess if they Corki here, yeah, you're winning jungle. You are winning jungle and you're winning dragon stacking, but like it still can reach a problem. The problem would be like 4 items. I guess it can reach 4 items, but this is without knowing what R4 is. I think that we can develop. I think this is fine. It doesn't matter. No one's going to draft like this. Okay, let's get back to LCK. A ZRGP matchup? Yeah, that'd be fine. I mean, that's a really rare, like, not rare, but like no one is going to play that, you know what I mean?
The second time this happens, he has